So this session will start with some introductory remarks from Angel Gurria, the Secretary General of the OECD, where he's going to present a report, some of which we're going to be able then to discuss on a panel. So after the remarks, I will invite the panelists onto the stage and we'll get going. Thank you. No time to waste.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. It's been a bit of a hectic morning. Dear Excellencies, Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to open the third OECD Global Platform on Governance of the Future, an initiative of the MENA OECD Governance Program, which I launched here 2 years ago. I'd like to thank the United Arab Emirates for hosting us at the World Government Summit. This has become a major global hub for strategic discussions to make governments and societies fit for the challenges of today, but perhaps more crucially, for the challenges of tomorrow. Now, today's discussion focuses on disruptive technology and innovation. I met a good friend, Alexander Stubbs of Finland, former Prime Minister, running outside of this room. He said, "You are late for disruption." Well, that's a way to put it, you know. One can never be too late for disruption, I suppose. It's a timely topic as the tectonic shifts brought about by digitalization are transforming our economies, our governments, our societies in a most profound way. While these processes have the potential to spark innovation, to develop new tools and policies for promoting inclusiveness and sustainable development, they also bring disruption in many ways. Their impact on jobs and unemployment is one crucial concern. We estimate 9% of the jobs in the OECD are at high risk of being automated, which means displaced. While for an additional 25% of the jobs, if you combine the two, it's more than 1/3 of the workforce, they will change because of disruption precisely, of the kinds of the jobs, of the type of the jobs, even of what you do in that job every day. So you will create people who may feel maybe overqualified or underqualified for those particular jobs. You may create a little bit of stress or a lot of stress. With rising inequalities and anxieties around technology and globalization, more than ever, governments have to show people that the right policy settings can improve their lives and the lives of their children. This is particularly true in the context of the current confidence crisis. Levels of public trust are at record lows. In the OECD, only 4 out of 10 citizens trust their government. More than ever, governments have to show that they are up to the challenge of embracing a future of unknowns, uncertainties, and as we called it in our recent global strategy group, unprecedented unpredictability. Even difficult to say, it's like a tongue twister. But this is what the world looks like today, unprecedented unpredictability. So the good news is governments are making progress. The OECD Observatory of Public Sector Innovation has joined the United Arab Emirates Mohammed bin Rashid Center for Government Innovation to develop a global review of frontier public sector innovation. What's going on? What is the cutting edge? Who is doing what better in terms of innovation? And I'm pleased to launch here the fruit of this partnership. This is called Embracing Innovation in Government, Global Trends 2018. We, of course, launched last year, the 2017. So this is a product that we will be updating and upgrading all the time. So we will be following not only what goes on, but also what changes and what are the trends when we're talking about innovation in government. The report draws on leading-edge innovation practices. It looks at 58 countries, so it's a pretty broad sample. And it highlights 3 positive trends. First, governments are exploring new ways to provide identities to individuals and to businesses by using emerging technologies, biometric, blockchain, the very famous now Aadhaar India project, 1.2 billion people. That's 15% of the total world population. So, pretty interesting example. The second is that governments are transforming the way services are provided. Services. Why is services? The world today is about services. We fight so much. We have negotiations, free trade agreements about manufacturing. And we fight and rent our clothes and we douse gasoline and turn on the light, it's about agriculture. And that's 5% of the world's, economy. Manufacturers are 10, 15% of the world, and the rest is about services. And we don't even have a worldwide agreement about services. We don't have a WTO about services. We don't have international institutions that deal with the services. And there are several approaches. For example, Canada's free agent and the talent cloud programs to deal with services. You also have a number of others which are mentioned in the book, which tell you it can be done. In fact, it's being done already, except it is not a general approach. It's kind of piecemeal, it's fragmented. So let's take a hard look at how we can improve the question of services, because services are the way of the future. It's knowledge. I mean, UAE, you are now planning here for the future, for the post-oil. Hopefully, post-oil will be a long, long time. So hopefully you will be a country with oil and the rest. But the rest is going to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And therefore, the question of how you deal with the rest, meaning mostly services, is going to be very important. Then, the question of a greater push for innovative programs promoting inclusiveness. In Norway, there's something called the Asker Welfare Lab, supporting vulnerable citizens. There are also very many others in the book. The relevant city services, also cities, cities, cities. We are becoming an urban world. Now, even in places like China, most of the people now live in cities. So right now, we're moving towards urbanization inevitably. Again, that has to be factored into account when we're looking at governments and governance of a process like the question of urbanization. How do you invest in people's well-being when you're dealing with an urbanization process and with this challenge? How does the Minister of Youth, take a look? I'm going to be presenting in a few moments more with the youth center. How do you deal with youth that is mostly urbanized? So the importance of systems-wide approach to navigate in an uncertain future. We must be aware of the risks ahead, of the trade-offs from technological disruption. We must be prepared, not only aware, but prepared to be agile, reactive, prepared to face these facts. Then we must be forward-looking, aware, prepared, and forward-looking. This is how we are going to succeed. There's still very few examples of countries innovating through specific welfare or labor market programs to support the jobs lost to automation. We still do not have good formulae to rescue the ones that are being the victims of automation. You cannot make every miner, or you cannot make a taxi driver into, when the cars are going to be driverless, into a computer expert. But they can be transformed into something else that will be useful, provided they get the skilling, the upskilling, the reskilling. It's not going to happen magically. We have to have public programs that do just that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Mariana Mazzucato, an Italian economist, recently said that not only has government funded the riskiest research, whether applied or basic, but it has often been the source of the most radical, path-breaking types of innovation. That means the role of government cannot be substituted when it comes to looking at innovation. And when it comes to innovating governments, well, of course, it's by definition governments that have the responsibility to innovate themselves. So, the OECD is here to help governments assume that role, face the challenges that lie ahead, to navigate an uncertain future. We're building a global community and a global knowledge based in supporting and disseminating innovations like the ones I have mentioned today. We invite you to connect with us so that together we can design, so that together we can develop, and that together we can deliver better policies for better lives. Thank you very much.
So if I could ask the panelists to come up to the stage and so we can get started. My name is Riyad Hamadi. I'm the executive editor for Middle East and Africa for Bloomberg. What we're going to do is I'm going to actually start with Prime Minister Isakov because he has to leave in about 10 minutes for another important meeting. So we just heard technology is disrupting the status quo in many areas, be it in renewable energy, automation, change is coming. And while human society has seen change before at a grand scale, what's different this time may be the pace, the speed with which it's changing. So the role of government in helping manage that change is very important, hugely important. As we can see, it's not always positive. There's a rise of populism, which came partly in response to globalization and a perception of increased economic inequalities. And the trust, as already mentioned earlier, in governments is at its lowest ebb. Let me start with Prime Minister Isakov. By the way, there is simultaneous translation for the Prime Minister. You should all have the headsets next to you. Prime Minister, we talked a little bit earlier about the digitalization program that your country is launching. Can you tell us a bit about the aim of that program and what exactly it entails?
Урматтуу айымдар жана мырзалар, биринчиден мен Кыргызстаным жөнүндө кыскача айтып берсем, менин Кыргызстаным Борбор Азияда жайгашкан, биздин кошуналар Кытай, Казакстан, Өзбекстан, Тажикстан. Биз Кыргызстандын эң ортосунда, Борбор Азиянын эң ортосунда турабыз да. Бизде мындай чоң ресурстар деле жок. Нефть жок, газ деле жок. Бирок менин Кыргызстанымда эң чоң бир байлык бар. Бул кыргыз эли. Анан мына биздин өкмөт өзгөчө басым жасаганы бул ошо санарип Кыргызстанды куруу боюнча. Биз бул долбоордун атын таза коом деп койдук. Чистое, прозрачное общество. Эң негизги биздин ошо максатыбыз ушул долбоор аркылуу коррупцияны түп тамыры менен жоюу. Андан тышкары мына цифровизация деп атабыз, бул көп жакшы нерселерге алып келет экен да. Бизде Кыргызстанда 6 миллион жаран жашайт. Ошондуктан мынакей мен премьер-министр катары уже көрүп атам. Бұл көп жақсы натыйжаларын алып келеді екен цифровизация. Мына таможняда, салық қызматында дағы көп жақсы мындай позитивті нәрселерді алып келіп жатады. Біз Қырғызстан OGP программасына келдік, Open Government Partnership. Борбор Азияда бірінші мемлекет болып кіріп жатабыз. Анан жақын арада біз горнодобывающий отрасльде, в системе госуправлений, в предоставлении более качественных услуг для граждан ең жақсы көрсөткүчтөрдү көрсөтөлү деп атабыз. Биздин цифровизацияга болгону бир жылдагы боло элек. Биздин жарандар уже мындай жакшы натыйжаларды көрүп баштады деп ойлойм. Кыргызстандыктардын баары таза коом деп, кичинекей баладан чоң кишиге чейин таза коом деп аташат. Мен ойлойм, ошо жакынкы 3 жылда биз ошо мындай санарип өкмөт болобуз деп. Себеби биз дүйнө жүзүнөн дагы калбайлы деп атабыз. Бул бизге, мамлекетке көп жакшы нерселерин берет. Рахмат.
So this is quite an aggressive program. You're saying in the next 3 years you want Kyrgyzstan to have proceeded to being a digital nation, a fully digitalized nation. It sounds like very much a revolution that you are planning. I wanted to ask Boris, in Slovenia you're taking a different approach to that model.
Well, we also strongly believe that digitalization and everything that brings to the government is a very powerful tool. It's a powerful tool that you have to learn to use it. You need the data, you need to know how to deal with the data, that they can support you with the better decision making and more predictive decision making. That's important. But on the other hand, you can bring technology, but it's only part of the solution. You need the technology, you need the society, you need the mind, how you work with it, you need the skills, you need the new jobs relations. So it's a complex process. So we strongly believe that, I like to say that the biggest reform that you can bring to the system is if you implement in the system ability for constant improvement. So what we are trying to do is to support the innovative processes, lifelong learning processes that constantly improve the systems, but they don't radically change it. But when you look at a period, for example, 4 or 5 years, you find out that basically you radically change the system. But with the small steps in very fast phase. This is the fastest way for the improvement that we find it. And it's not so disruptive, because the technologies by themselves are already disruptive. So if you do small steps, you get less opposition, and you somehow, in natural way, you lose the bad things and keep the good things. This is the way that we like it.
I'm going to ask the Prime Minister again, because I know you have to leave soon. Are you facing some challenges or some resistance among the population to this program? Is there concern about data security, for example? And also, you told me earlier that Kyrgyzstan is the rural population makes up about 60% of the population. How are you going to approach the cost of spreading the technology to the whole of the population?
Я хотел бы особо отметить, что, конечно, самое главное, вот предыдущий выступающий очень правильно сказал, сделать так, чтобы правительство стало ближе к своему народу, к людям, которые живут в этой стране. Это очень важно, чтобы народ доверял этому правительству. Это самая главная задача, которую мы перед собой ставим. Соответственно, должно быть все прозрачно. Те данные, которые мы будем открывать, они должны приносить пользу всем. И правительству, и бизнесу, и индивиду. Но в нашей стране мы ставим очень важную задачу, что в такой глобальной цифровизации индивидуальные данные человека должны быть защищены максимально. Это очень важная задача, чтобы защитить максимально эти данные. Да, у нас более 60% населения работает в сельской местности. И цифровизация откроет очень много позитивного. Вот, например, у нас в каждом селе, а у нас их 453 села, в каждом селе есть скотские рынки, потому что там покупают, продают скот. И, естественно, жители, они выходят прямо на базар. Но сегодня 21 век, совершается 4-я индустриальная революция. И человек не должен тратить время, чтобы купить или продать товар. И, конечно, есть очень много посредников, которые перепродают сельхозкультуру. И цифровизация исключит и эти факторы. Это очень важно. То есть наша задача упростить жизнь каждого гражданина. И, конечно, в сельских местностях у молодых детей, у детей появляется возможность открыть глаза пошире. То есть перед ним открывается мир через интернет. Вот это очень важно. И, естественно, государство должно в какой-то степени очень правильно регулировать контент, обучать национальному языку, иностранному языку, английскому и другим языкам. И это нужно масштабировать. Вот это очень важная задача для нас.
And I wanted to ask you about the Chinese Belt and Road program. I know that that is also part of your government's initiative. How does Tazakum fit into the Belt and Road program?
Это инициатива Китайской Народной Республики, которую выдвинул господин Си Цзиньпинь. И поскольку мы находимся на одной дороге, скажем так, мы полностью поддерживаем эту инициативу. И она открывает перед Кыргызстаном большие возможности. Естественно, вот в рамках одного пояса, одного пути, в рамках цифровизации будет строиться огромные инфраструктурные проекты по передаче, по прокладке широкополосного доступа в интернет, по строительству ЦОДов. Ну и самое главное, у нас и строится, значит, у нас есть очень большой проект, который будет соединять большие континенты. Это будет самый наикратчайший путь строительства железной дороги. Мы сегодня проводим активные переговоры с нашими китайскими коллегами для того, чтобы приступить к реализации этого проекта. И вообще этот проект, он открывает большие возможности практически для такого большого мира. И я думаю, что мы еще будем с вами вместе свидетелями очень таких больших, грандиозных свершений вот в этой части.
Okay, the Prime Minister has to leave us now to go to his meeting. We will then continue the conversation.
Спасибо.
If I could continue with Minister Mazrui, the UAE has already undertaken some steps on the road to digitalizing some of its government programs. What's next for the UAE? What are the challenges it's facing in that area?
If you allow me, I think I would like to make an interlinkage between what we heard earlier from the OECD head. What is facing the world today is going to be the increased demand on energy and on water, and that could be an opportunity or an issue. What UAE is trying to do is trying to give an example through policies and regulations to ensure that we use less energy. So our strategy is aiming to reduce the consumption per capita by about 40%. And also introduce the interconnectivity, the smart grid, to ensure that we use wisely the electricity and water. And we have done certain transformation in terms of our grid a few years back to what we are aiming for our grid to be. Hopefully, our houses and our people will consume less by 40% by 2050, and that will give an example of how we share energy and share water. And the transformation is happening We're not there yet, but I think we have taken steps toward that, and we have issued a policy, which was a bottom-up policy by all of the providers, and everyone is committed to deliver on that policy.
So one part of that policy is to work closer with the private sector, to get the private sector and allow the government to become more of a supervisor or the organization that provides the framework. Can you tell us a bit more about the policies that you're implementing to do that?
Sure. The government is going to regulate the business and the transition, but the private sector is going to lead and contribute to those projects. Most of those projects, which is around will cost around $160 billion from now until 2050 to deliver the energy strategy, is going to be for the private sector and to the private sector. But we are not going to allow the private sector to bring a low efficiency into the system. The government and the policy will ensure that we will always have the highest efficiencies, and because the goal is to reduce emissions by 70%, reduce the consumption by 40%. We will build smarter buildings, we will build smarter grids, and we will enable the innovations in the private sector to go and deliver on that basis. So this is the intent, and we have seen, for example, when we focused on the renewable energy, we managed to reduce the cost of solar, for example, from a few years back around 10 cents, and now it's less than 2 cents, so it's almost free. And that was enabled through large-scale projects and a partnership with the private sector and the manufacturers.
Nuclear is part of your energy mix. Can you tell us when the first reactor will come online, or?
We are working very hard on delivering with the regulator, but this is the first reactor, and what's important for us is to deliver it in a manner that is safe, 100% safe, because this is the first reactor in UAE, and this is the first reactor in the region. So what's important is to deliver it on the best standards of safety, we have an independent body, which is FANAR. They are a regulator, and they are going to decide when it's going to be ready. But I know that the team are working day and night with both the contractors and the regulator to answer every question and assure our people that we will deliver a safe reactor for years to come.
Patrick, Ireland, I think, is taking a similar route as Slovenia in terms of the systems it's putting in place. Can you tell us a bit about the partnership maybe with the private sector that you're looking to build on, and also the challenges in terms of education?
Well, like a lot of countries, Ireland has come through a fairly difficult period in the immediate aftermath and during the recession. So we had to, like every other country within the European Union and elsewhere, we had to reform our practices both within the private sector and within the public sector. And this meant, for instance, a recruitment embargo on our public sector. It reduced our capability to employ people into the public sector, and that had a knock-on effect. So what we've decided to do, I suppose, is to emulate countries like Estonia and other EU countries that have really made a great pitch for the moving government services online and making government more accessible to people and making it more transparent and making it also more, as I say, user-friendly. Because what we want to do ultimately is to increase efficiency within our public sector by agreement with our public service employees, who have really risen to the challenge over the last number of years, where they have taken on huge additional amounts of responsibilities and at the same time taken pay cuts, while we managed to maintain industrial peace across our public sector, which was fairly remarkable. We now want to be in a situation where we bring government closer to the people in a very trusting way, where people can see the government at work. And we've done a number of pieces of legislation up to now, whether it's in relation to freedom of information, lobbying of public officials, all of that, together with standards in public office that we are also trying to do to show people that the government is far more, and by government I don't mean just those that are elected and those that hold office, but those that work for the government. The government is transparent, and I suppose in my own area that I'm responsible for, in the area of procurement, in 2011 we started off on a journey to reform how we procure state services and state goods in a very open and transparent fashion, where people have access to information. It's a competitive process. It's like other EU states, but it's very advanced. And we found that in collaborating with both the private sector to find out what's the best available technology, listening to the public, responding to our own civil and public sector workers who are the front line really of the operation of the Government of Ireland, we were able to bring in these changes. But we still have further to go, as you say, along the road of science and technology teaching. It's going to become a huge challenge as we try and as we hit full employment in Ireland into the future, to get more people into the area of science, technology, engineering and maths, particularly young women, because we have a very well-developed technology sector, we have a very well-developed science sector and engineering sector. We want to continue to grow that, but we will only be able to do that if we have the available skill set. And that means encouraging people at a much earlier stage, from kindergarten upwards, to look at science, technology, engineering and maths as a route for them to get a career and to be able to have a job and ultimately a family and build a home, etc. in Ireland.
Is that the approach you're taking in answer to I mean, some people see it as a threat of automation to jobs, i.e. already get people trained early on, take them in a direction where their jobs would not be at risk of automation?
Yeah, well, we've come through this period before. We endured a situation where there was a lot of job losses in the economy from heavy manufacturing into automation. And as a result of that, our Department of Education and our government focused on, well, what do we do with people, as the OECD representative said there a while ago, what do we do with people that fall foul of that? Do we just leave them to one side and everybody gets on with it, or do we bring them with us? And we feel as a society and as a community it's very important to give people every chance. So upskilling regardless of age, continuing lifelong education and continuing access to education and to change skill sets. And on a regional, local and national basis, we have skills officers who look at the future skills that are required, not only in terms of technology, but in terms of maintaining community, because community is a huge part of what we are in Ireland. So when people come to a certain age, they might feel that that they don't have a future and that they're not employable. But in Ireland, everybody has a contribution to make, and everybody's contribution is valued, whether that's in relation to working in the community or in relation to upskilling by way of university.
Boris, you said the Slovenian policy is very much one of step by step, of building a system of continuous change. In terms of the trust in the government, which not just in Slovenia but across the board, there's been an issue with people's trust in government. What has Slovenia done on that front to win back that trust? For example, I think you told me earlier there was an interesting way of looking at procurement in a different way, rather than looking at what you want to buy, sort of put out a tender on what's the solution, what's the problem that you want to solve.
For first, if you want to be trusted, you have to act every day very transparent. And with the digital technology, it's very simple. You just publish everything what's possible to publish. Our attitude to data is not that we ask ourselves what data can be shared, but we ask ourselves which data cannot be shared. So if it's personal, business or governmental data, you don't share it.
There has to be a reason not to publish it,
if
basically.
it's not, it's public good.
Right.
So you share everything.
Yeah.
When it comes to the cooperation between public and between government and the private sector, it's one important changes that maybe in the past we had private systems and resources and the governmental systems and resources. Today, we share the same systems. We use the same internet, we use the same data. Even about our citizens' data are flowing around different networks, governmental and private. So what we try to do is to cooperate closely with the private sector, because we share things. And when it comes to the close cooperation, it's, for example, one of the changes that we did is in the public procurement. So we try not to buy things, but we procure to solve the problem. We don't say we need that kind of a car, but we say our public servants have to be mobile. So what do you suggest? So this is part to co-creation. On the same system, with the same knowledge, we share the same problems, which are not private or public, but we share also the problems. So why don't we solve them together? So this is why we also introduce very much, let's say, a design approach as a deep understanding. We open the government, what we do, that the private sector understands, and we go in the private sector, that we understand what they do. We even exchange the employees through Partnership over Change, is one of the interesting programs. So it's a co-creation, step by step, because we have common platforms, common data, we share the problems, so why don't solve them together?
I mean, education does come up a lot in all of this. I know Slovenia has a very high-level, well-educated population. It's also a small population, spread around relatively evenly across the country. But is it enough to just release to make the data available, or do you have to then also find ways to help people interpret that data properly? I mean, you know, you can do what you want with statistics, or you can be selective in statistics or in numbers. But do you see that as an issue if there's that much data being released to you that it can overwhelm to the point of not being informative?
It is an issue, definitely. We say, we always look at the life as a two-side. We have a real life and the digital life. And everything what today happens in real life basically has a digital signature. But today, more and more things are happening in digital life and have influence in the digital life. The first step was, if you remember, this Pokemon walks. What was it? This is the first, that something happens in digital life, and real people in real life, they get, I don't know, accidents. But in the digital life, in real life, we have maps. We can navigate easily. In digital life, we are lost in data, lost in space. So what we try to do is that this data can be structured. These data have to be approached through the artificial intelligence mechanisms. And when we open the data, we even open the tenders, what you can do with the governmental data on the universities, on the secondary schools, for example. And we offer the data because our development philosophy, we also like to call it, is a so-called productivity sandwich. We say what's our responsibility is to ensure the communication in the ground, fast optical communication. By 2020, we expect that every household in Slovenia will have 100 megabit access, and we are working in that direction. It's a realistic goal. That we have open communication in the sky. We are working very hard on implementing 5G project as one of the first country will be covered with the 5G. In the sandwich, you put the data and free access of the data and free accessible platforms that everyone can connect to everyone, and then you live it. In that environment, any kind of a solution will grow if it is good, and then you just let it then you go through the startup community, accelerators, governmental support, subsidize. You speed up, but you don't create, because we share the problems, and in this environment, any kind of a good seed will grow.
I mean, that sounds, Minister Mazrui, it sounds very similar to what you envisaged as well. But, you know, in terms of the data release, do you see the UE also going down that route of releasing all the data, i.e. saying the only data you're not going to have is where we take a conscious decision of not publishing it. Everything else will be available to the public?
I think realistically, the world is moving toward the blockchain, and the data exchange is going to be something that is inevitable. It's coming to every government. I agree. We should not hide any data. Actually, if people know their consumption and then you drive the right messages, they will change. But I think we're not even going to do that. The machine in the future, the artificial intelligence, is going to decide. That smart grid in a city is going to decide when your washer machine, which is not going to be manually feeded, is going to work. And it's going to decide when to switch off your air condition because you have left your house. and you're going to your office, to control the temperature, the heating, and the cooling. All of the consumption, I think, in the future is going to be run by the machine and by the data. And that will achieve the overall target that we are hoping for as a country, which is becoming very efficient and drive efficiency through data. So the country is going to, the government is going to be an incubator of those new technologies that are going to provide us with solutions to solve some of those issues that we don't have today. The interconnectivity is also something very important between countries, because you could be efficient as a country, but imagine if all of the continents are interconnected. If we can move that energy or that data to better manage the flow, I think those are where the artificial intelligence and those interruptive technologies are going to help humanity to consume efficiently.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists. We have to leave it there. I think we're already 5 minutes over. Thank you to the audience, and I hope you found it interesting. Thank you. Thank you.